Herbology of Maryland, serving patients in Carroll County, Montgomery County, and surrounding areas. Two things that I love about Herbology in Maryland is first, they are there for patients at every step of the way. If you are new to cannabis, you can give them a call and they will help you figure out what step one is. And the second is delivery. Who wants to go out and get their cannabis when it's a cold, dreary day? And you can save 10% off your first order if you order today. And you can call their Westminster store at 443-487-4552 or Gaithersburg at 240-654-0911. And if you are interested in stopping by the dispensaries, you can go to the one in Westminster located at 700 Corporate Center Court and in Gaithersburg at 106 North Frederick Avenue off of Route 355. Visit myherbology.com for any additional details. Herbology, dream in green. The podcast today is brought to you by the creative group at Evermore Cannabis Company. Evermore is responsible for some of the most unique cannabis strains in the Maryland market. What I love most about Evermore is their focus on quality and procedure to ensure that the patient's experience is unique and rewarding. You can check out some of their recently released new flower strains like Orange Fruit Snacks, Big Lemons, and Airborne Skunk. If edibles are your thing, then go ahead and check out their discos. Raspberry discos are my favorite, and they were critical to me getting any sleep after my shoulder surgery. When you're ready for more Evermore, stop by their conveniently located dispensary at 1636 Reisterstown Road in Pikesville, Maryland, right off of the 695 Beltway, exit 20. And you can visit them at evermorecompany.com. You can catch me every Tuesday at Pure Life Wellness for Industry Day. And if we're being honest, you can probably catch me there a lot of other days during the week. But if you are in the restaurant or cannabis industry, Tuesday is your day to stop by where you'll get 25% off your order. You will also get to meet the amazing team there. So visit them at 35 East Cross Street in the heart of Federal Hill, right across from the newly redesigned Cross Street Market. And you can visit them at purelifebaltimore.com. See you on Tuesday. As a result of evolving public opinion, the rapid recognition of the benefits of medical cannabis, and more states supporting legal use for medical reasons, the need for medical workforce with a knowledge of this incredible plant is more important than ever. At Peake ReLeaf, we are thankful for our cannabis nurses and how they practice cannabis-based nursing that incorporates knowledge of safe cannabis products, education on the endocannabinoid system, recognizing clean and safe medicine, identifying drug interactions, and so much more. You can learn about qualifying medical conditions in Maryland that you as a patient may want to discuss with your medical provider, including nurses, at relief.tv/PTSD. Mention this ad for 10% off your total purchase during your next visit at Peake ReLeaf. And you can follow them on Twitter and Facebook at Peake ReLeaf and on Instagram at Peakstagram. The Cannabis Science Conference is back in town April 6th through the 8th at the Baltimore Convention Center, and you want to get your tickets now. The two events that I'm most excited about are the Canna Boot Camp, where we get to actually see all the pretty plants and see what happens way before any of our product hits dispensary shelves, and of course the reception at the aquarium. I missed it last year, and I won't be missing it this year. Please join me, Josh, and Andrea, and the entire gang from the Cannabis Science Conference, April 6th through 8th. And if you're looking to get your tickets, you can get 25% off as a Conversations with Maryjane listener by using the code MJ25. Come and geek out with me. I met James in the spring of 2019, and despite being in the best health of my life, I still felt sick, anxious, and depressed. And over the course of the last year, we have worked together week by week, discovering what food is best for my body, creating meditation and mindfulness practices that help me set myself up for my best day, and really working to prepare my mind, body, and spirit holistically for my daily challenges. My work with James has been transformational and has provided me with the strength and courage and equanimity needed to live the life that I want. If you are suffering from chronic illness, if you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's worked, James, my holistic lifestyle coach, could help you. He works with people who have been suffering from decades to those who are newly diagnosed. If you're interested in reaching out to James, you can shoot him an email at james@sparkvisionnow.com. Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time of day that you're watching or listening. My name is Jill Franquelli, and I am the host of Conversations with Maryjane, Right now it is Thursday, February 20th, bright and early in the middle of the day. And but this episode's going to drop on Monday, February 24th, just so you have a little frame of reference. So I hope life's been good to you since the last time that we saw each other, and that you have shared some love and kindness. Really excited to talk about 2 events that I went to last week where love and kindness was aplenty. So the first was Thursday. I went to Cannabis, and Cheryl Murray Powell and Leo Bridgewater spoke on being Black in cannabis. And I had every intention of taking notes, but it was so engaging that I didn't take one note. So here's what I can tell you is the feeling I left with was that there is a lot of work happening out there. There is a lot of passion out there to help give Black people a chance to get what they deserve in the cannabis industry. And I'm so excited for those foundations that both Leo and Cheryl spoke about. David, great job. I know this was your largest event yet, and I hope that this is not the last time that we have a topic like this at any of our networking events. So congrats, David, on a great job. And Leo and Cheryl, thank you for your passion and all your support and work to help us get the cannabis industry where it needs to be. So that was Thursday, and then I was lucky enough to have Blair, you may know her as Backwoods Blair, ask me to do a meditation for her brunch. So if you've never been to her brunch, it happens sometimes on the weekends, maybe a Saturday or Sunday. They're the most delicious little mini pancakes. Side note about me, I love mini food. So regular size muffin, no good. Mini muffin, delicious. So she makes tons of little mini pancakes, great food. You're able to consume your cannabis there and have great conversations. But what she asked me to do, which was a little bit different, was to lead this meditation. And so I was really excited to do it. However, anytime anyone asks me to do something that's a little outside of the norm, I get a little nervous of what everyone's going to think, as I'm sure most of you do when you do something new. So if you can imagine, I come rolling in at the middle of brunch. Everyone's been having a good time, probably smelling a little bit like meat and cheese because I just stopped, wrapped up Simple Sacrifice. And then we gather everyone together and I make everyone sit very close. And I'm going to say, and now we are all going to have a collective heartbeat. And you would have thought maybe an I would roll or maybe a boo or a hiss, but nope, everyone was there for it. And I think it was the most magical moment. If you hop on over to Blair's Instagram, you'll see some of the words that she put down about the day. But I'm so thankful that we have events like Canna Gather, like Spark, like Blair's Brunch, that we can gather together and learn more and connect with one another. I think that brunch was my favorite so far because of all the people in the room. I left feeling so good because I felt your energy and your love and your passion. And so I know she's having another one in March. So check that out if you would like something to do with a consumption event and meeting more community members. Spring is upon us, so I would imagine more and more events are happening out there. If you'd like to see the entire meditation that we did, you can go to my IGTV and you can catch the full 2 minutes of it over there. Thanks, Blair, for having the courage to do something just a little bit weird for brunch, and it paid off in a huge way. I wanted to give you 2 updates while we're together. The first is we have our very first Medicate and Create all set. It is March 25th at the Just Say Yes Community Center in Bel Air, and we'll be putting advertising up about that. But the whole point of Medicate and Create, if you've not seen Molly's podcast a few weeks ago, is you'll be led through a series of exercises and instructions in learning how to journal, learning how to creative write, and learning how to tell your story. And so Molly is an award-winning writer. She's also a writing coach. And more than anything, she's taught me the power in telling my story. And so she had a brilliant idea about a year ago that she wanted to teach veterans to write their stories down, and then it has blossomed into this where she wants to help not only veterans but the cannabis community be able to heal through writing down their stories. So pay attention on social media. We'll get that posted. There'll be registration. It's free of charge. We'll announce who the sponsor is of that for the year soon. So, and thanks to Just Say Yes for letting us do it there. I really appreciate it. It takes a whole community to be able to put on events that we reach all over the state and not just in our larger cities. So another amazing update is on the High Five Initiative. So we had guest Phil Ash a few weeks ago. And if you don't know, the High Five Initiative is a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to getting the number 5 plastic out of the recycling stream, which really there isn't a recycling stream, and back into the manufacturing stream so it can be used again. And number 5 plastic is the most commonly used plastic for all of our 8th containers. So you can imagine with, close to 100,000 patients and the amount of cannabis rolling through, we're doing a ton of damage to the environment. But thanks to Phil and Bree at the High Five Initiative, we have some place to put our plastic. So at the beginning of January, they had 2 collection centers. There's now 13 of them. You can go on their website, the High Five Initiative, to find out where they are. I am waiting for a dispensary in Baltimore City so I can drop off my bags. I have fulfilled my promise of not throwing out one piece of my cannabis plastic, and my wife is getting really upset because my house smells like a grow now. So you can bring all of your number 5 plastic to those collection centers, and they have even posted they're doing some cleanups. So it is all about being part of the solution, not the pollution. So you can check out their 3 events on their website, register. I know one of them is a kayak cleanup on the water. So that will be a lot of fun if you like to be out there. So congrats, Phil and Bree. This is awesome. If anyone wants to become a collection center or you want to learn more about how plastic is affecting our waterways and our future, you can go to the high5initiative.com. So I am, as you know, the word that I love, excited because I am going to introduce a new segment, and it is called Question, Comment, or Sarcastic Remark. So when I was a corporate trainer, at the end of every class, just to sum it up, or maybe because I don't know how to end things, I just would always ask this question: does anyone have any questions, comments, or sarcastic remarks? Every now and again, I would get a great sarcastic remark that would cause me to laugh. So that's this new portion of the show. I've had a few people write in, and they have some questions for us. And the first one, and thanks for everyone who kind of helped get the momentum rolling on this. So on the first one, it's from I Run, Not Diet. And so her question was, and this is for everyone, so we'll put these questions in the comments of the podcast so you guys can respond to them too, because I am not an expert at shit. So she wants to know, are there folks out there that have personal consultation with to determine which types of cannabis work best for the ailments that we are having? She pretty much guesses, and she's a lover of blues and purples, but she wants to make sure that she's doing things that make sense for her. Well, first of all, I love blues and purples and cookies and muffins and cakes. I mean, I love it all. Who are we kidding? But back to your question. I think what you're asking is $1 million question. Like, when we go and get a pill from a doctor, it's like, if you have this, then you take this, and you take this many milligrams and this many times a day. And that's not really how cannabis works. And so the 2 guests that are on the show today, Olga and Dawn, they are great resources to find out maybe not exactly what works for you, but kind of the methodology and the theory behind what works for you and how you can find out. And so how I learned, so, I'll just share what I did and then everyone can comment. I learned first through Facebook groups, through people posting, through people asking questions like this. So if someone said they had anxiety, I would read all of those comments to see all of the strains that everyone recommended for anxiety. But here's what I found out very quickly is there was really no one thing. Like, I saw heavy sativas, I saw heavy indicas, I saw hybrids, I saw concentrates, vapes, flowers, edibles. Everything helped everyone's anxiety in some way, shape, or form because everyone's chemistry is different. So what I had to do is take that little bit of information, and I kind of looked at the post and said, okay, this one strain got the most votes, so I'm going to start with that. So I would go and purchase that strain. Now, I think, we can all agree trial and error in cannabis is costly. We don't want to waste medicine. And so I highly recommend that when you're doing trial and error, that you go to a deli-style dispensary where you can get the smallest amount so that you can just try it. So I would get the smallest amount of that. And when I would feel anxious, I would note why I was feeling anxious, how I felt in the environment, like I would write it down in a journal, and then I would consume that cannabis. And then I would journal afterwards. So how did I feel? And I just had to pay attention to how my body felt. Yeah, and so there are some that made my anxiety, and even some of the most popular ones that made my anxiety worse. But I just kept trying, and I would write down the combinations of the things that made me feel good and just take it from there. So then that was one way, and then someone taught me a great way. So if anybody ever followed my Instagram when I first started in the cannabis industry, I only ever consumed anything ever labeled an indica. I had a very bad experience with something with the word Afghani in it and a desert and maybe thunder. And I just had probably one of the worst panic attacks of my life. So knowing that that was a sativa, I just stayed away from that because I had no knowledge or experience in how to use all types of medicine. So last January, I was feeling particularly stressed and depressed, and I walked into Pure Life, and I don't remember if it was Carly or Jorgen, but they just said, "Have you ever tried G6?" And I was like, "Nope, I stay away from that end of the counter." And, they invited me down and they let me smell it. And I couldn't believe how tasty it smelled to me. And now I was like, well, that smells really good. And so I was convinced to get it. And I couldn't believe how much that strain helped me in that moment. And it's something that I never would have figured out unless someone told me to smell it. I mean, if something smells good, we buy it, right? It's still the same premise of why you buy perfume, why foods taste good to you, all of those things. So your cannabis is the same way. And so I think if you do trial and error and you spend time journaling and thinking to yourself and really evaluating what works for you, that's one way. Or you can go and start to use your nose and really add that part of how to find your medicine. So what was interesting, though, just to kind of piggyback why the G6 works for my anxiety, later on we found out that a lot of my anxiety is triggered by depression. And so it would be normal in January when it's so dark and I feel the most depressed that I would feel the most anxious. And so why G6 and why some of these sativas work for me and my anxiety is because it's really, my anxiety is a byproduct of a depression. And so that's how I found what works for me. And so I hope you find out what works best for you. You follow along in the comments. I appreciate you always commenting with your questions as well. And hopefully that was some kind of answer. Because again, I don't know anything. I can only tell you what I do. So the next one's a comment, and it is from Bud Biz Creative. And so I totally agree with this comment. She says, "My ongoing gripe is food selection at events. It's not balanced and it's mostly processed." Yeah, I totally agree with this. And as someone who throws a lot of events, I get actually very annoyed that the vegetables are the things that are left. And so as an event, though, I think there's this rub of you want people to have fun, enjoy food, and you want them to feel good and be healthy. But even when I attend Blair's brunch, and I know I shouldn't eat 37 mini pancakes, I still do it because it's a festive moment. And so, yeah, I completely understand why it's so hard. It's also a cost thing with people. I do think, though, we have events that do have options that are healthier, that for people who have allergies and sensitivities. And what I've always found, because I was one of those persons for a long time until I started to be really restrictive about my eating, is when there's gluten-free or vegetarian or vegan, do you know who eats it first? All the people who aren't those things. So maybe at an event, leave it for those who really have conditions or symptoms or restrictions that allow them to eat that way. That's a great idea. I also love your post this morning about just food in general needs to be amped up at all events. Okay, so for the next one, it is from Ganja Glam Barbie. How do you explain, not that we need to because it's our medicine, to people who still believe in all the negative stigma factors that we are not just trying to get high? I have family members who are curious about my job in the industry, as well as curious about my medicinal purposes, but they were raised in the Prohibition era, and they still look at me as a black sheep. How do you deal with situations like this, where you desperately want to explain to someone who just doesn't understand? So I know you're not alone in this challenge. I think anybody who consumes cannabis can completely understand kind of the jokes and the teasing that may happen, or the eye rolls, or maybe just the complete lack of feeling connected because you choose to use cannabis. So first, before I give my opinion on this, you have to do, as everyone does, what feels best for you and your family. And there's a million ways to do this. In fact, I tend to err more on a softer side. And being an example, there are people who carry big sticks and talk loudly. And so I think we all need the ways that we end stigma to work together. But what I worked on was the first step for me to be able to have an important and critical conversation in cannabis was for me to change my mindset. So how was I supposed to expect people to be okay with me? And what I did is if I snuck out. So the perfect example of this is I want to explain, my wife's family goes to the beach every year. So we're on our 9th year this year. And so when you asked this question, this actually led me down memory lane and kind of helped me put together even what my coming out process has been for cannabis. And so, years 1 through 3, I would sneak away at night. Nobody knew I consumed cannabis during the day because, oh my God, what were they going to think? I just was a stoner and not productive at that point. Not the case. But I also was very miserable because I was in high anxiety situations and I couldn't medicate as often as I wanted. So years 1 through 3, complete secret. Just doing it at night, hiding far, far away from the beach house so that no one could smell it. I would wash my hands feverishly, all of those things. So year 4, some cousins found out, right? And so, the younger generation. So, a couple of people joined me on some walks. It was a little more known, but nothing like it is today. So years 5 through 7 is really when summer by summer, I had to do just a little bit more. And this is when I became more aware of how, man, it's not really what I ever say. It's what people are watching me do. And so I wanted to be on my best cannabis behavior and be the best role model that I could be for them. And so again, every year, more and more people may join me for a walk. I still didn't bring anything in the house. I never did anything around people, never smoked around people who weren't going to partake. I just was very clear line. We do this over here. You guys do this over here. And I think even at family member's funeral, I snuck in a few edibles for everybody, just for those who needed them. So it started to slowly kind of evolve. And last year was the big moment. And I credit actually most of this community for this moment because there is a level of, I still give a lot of fucks. And so I had to get to a point where I became so comfortable with who I was, how I consumed cannabis. I wasn't embarrassed about smoking blunts, how much I consumed. Until that moment, I couldn't have year 8 happen. And so year 8 rolls around. It is 6 a.m., the first day at the beach. I am the only one up, and I take out my little stash bag, and in the kitchen, I roll my first blunt in the family's house. And then I walk outside to the porch, and I smoke it. And people wake up, and they get their coffee, and I'm just outside smoking a blunt, shaking because I was afraid of what they would say. But the whole time I did it, and then people came out and sat next to me, not expecting to smoke, not expecting to get anything, but because they wanted to be part of where I was. And so for me, that's how it worked. It was very slow, and it had everything to do with my safety and security in being myself and accepting who I was. It's funny that all coincided with, I think, one of the most transformational years that I had, which was last year, learning more about myself. And so be yourself, be gentle, be gentle with yourself when you're scared or embarrassed or you don't want to do it. I mean, we're all just humans. We're literally all just trying our fucking best on a daily basis. And some of us need a little more cannabis to do our best. So I thank you so much for that question. I think it will resonate with so many. And again, like I said, I'll put that in the comments so all of you can share why you do what you do with your family and how you change their minds. So this is a great question, especially because we have nurses speaking, and they're going to comment on this afterwards since we've already had their show recorded a couple of months ago. But Goose, the Canna Chef, asked me 2 questions. So he said, what cannabis helps with endometriosis? And then for men, how can cannabis help with the treatment of ED, which I'm assuming is erectile dysfunction? And while I cannot comment on any aspect about that, we'll put that question in the comments, and Olga and Dawn and all of you can comment on that. But I can help you out on the woman's side of things. So for endometriosis and other things like PCOS or heavy cramping, again, and I don't want you to get tired of me saying this, what works for me isn't going to work for everybody, but obviously it's a great starting point to kind of learn what works. So I have PCOS, which you heard in a few episodes ago, which is why I have facial hair, and fibroids. And so when I get my monthly period, I'm trying to deal with heavy cramping and mood swings like a dragon. So for me, I'm looking for calming, also very muscle relaxing because tons of cramps in my stomach, and probably some elevation. And so again, things like G6, grapefruit sour dream, sour diesel, even purple obia. And then I always do a 10-to-1 RSO. So that's just something I do on a daily basis to make sure that I'm getting enough CBD. And so, 10-to-1, I think it's Dr. Solomon's is the one I get from the dispensary. So that's what I do. Does it work all the time? No. Sometimes I need other things in conjunction with that. Sometimes a dab is necessary. Again, it's all just kind of learning what works for your body and being okay with it. This isn't, I'm just going to take a pill. You have to be okay that this is going to cause you to have to work to get your solution. So ladies, you can comment. Gentlemen, you can comment below. And then just one more question. And so this one I think is a doozy. And I actually appreciate that Ganja Queen Bee gave me an out not to answer it. But she asked, do you believe the MMCC chooses profits over the wellness of patients? Why or why not? So that's a tough one, and I understand why she would think I wouldn't touch it, because I am typically a middle-of-the-road kind of girl. But I have a middle-of-the-road answer for this, because I actually believe this. I think it's so tough, and there are so many levels and layers to government that, and the world, that it's even hard to begin to peel back and answer it the best way. So here's what I think ultimately. I think that government and regulations were supposed to be for us. And because government is run by humans and laws and all of this is held by humans and written by humans, other people's values and ideas start to become a part of that. And so that's where we get to where we get to. And so some person within government gets a great agenda, and maybe they're a little more charismatic, and so they're able to get their message across better, and so people start to listen to that. And then what happens is no one is on the other side checking to make sure that good is happening. And so that is my very lame-ass excuse of how government should work. So I think that the MMCC has people who are good in it. I think they're trying really hard. I think that there were people who were for profit and probably still are for profit. I think that's across all aspects of all businesses. It just feels worse in the cannabis industry because you're dealing with a plant that we can all grow that is healing people. And so I think that's why it just makes us feel so gross when we start to think about people really profiting off of cannabis. I'm not opposed to profit. I just am for everyone having access and getting what they need and being able to do it in whichever way that they want to. So I think that question, what I choose to focus on, is really what the opportunity that provides all of us on this side of it, right? So I'm not in government, nor do I ever plan to be. But what I can do is watch what's happening, and I can look at my values. I can make sure I vote. I can make sure I'm standing up. I can make sure I'm speaking my mind. I can make sure that I'm helping others. I mean, you can check out this kid, Connor Sheffield. He's a teenager, and he, for the last 2 or 3 days, has spent his days in Annapolis trying to get a bill crossed so that he can take cannabis in school because he's in the fight for his life. And I thought, what a powerful moment for Connor, how easy it could be for him just to sit and wait for someone to make change. However, he's making it. And that's what our opportunity is in this cannabis community, is to make the change so that that question, does the MMCC, does government, does anyone value money over us, is no longer there. Because what that Canna Gather taught me last Thursday was there are more of us than there are of them. We just need to come together. And so I'm very thankful that we have that community to do that with. And we have people who are out there fighting really hard for us to come together. So thanks for that question. And thanks for being patient as I really didn't answer it. But if anyone wants to get involved with the show with a question, a comment, or sarcastic remark, you can give me a call. You'll just leave a voicemail at 410-929-2127. Or you can DM me on Instagram, Jill Maryjane Mag, or you can send me an email at Jill at themaryjanemagazine.com, and we'll make sure that it gets on the air. So before we turn over to the guest, I want to just take 2 more moments of your time. First is to thank our show sponsors. So without them, there is no us. So Peake ReLeaf, Herbology, Evermore, Pure Life Wellness, Cannabis Science Conference, and James Hyland Coaching. Thank you so much for supporting us from the beginning. I, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that I'm able to do something I love and am so passionate about. So before I introduce our guest, I just want to take a personal moment. And if you would indulge me for 1 second. So today, February 20th, 2004, my mother, Angela Gail Franquelli, passed away from all the complications of her opioid addiction. And for the first 14 years after her death, I didn't understand what happened. I thought she had died from a terminal illness and a liver disease. I didn't understand why it happened. Probably some of the questions you guys have asked yourselves if you've ever had anyone with addiction in your life. And in the last 2 years, I found answers to those questions. And while the answers have been difficult to hear, and it's even harder trying to figure out how I didn't know, I found comfort in you and in your stories and in your struggle and your triumph. And I thank you for that. And while there's really not enough time for me to go through all of the answers to the whys and the hows and the whats, I do know why. It's for this moment. It's for every person who gets to hear your story, my story, who realizes there's a better way. They don't have to be addicted to something. And then that one day, that knowledge becomes action. And once you understand why you're here, like I have, there's a passion inside of you that just can't be stopped. Because you don't want anyone else to ever feel the way that you did or you do. And so I think Leslie Knope, her words are my own. And if I seem too passionate, it's because I care. And if I come off too strong, it's because I feel strongly. And if I push too hard, it's because things aren't moving fast enough. And that is my goal. Not one more tear shed because someone didn't know there was a better way to heal and to get better. Thank you for teaching me that. And now, welcome Olga and Dawn. everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Maryjane. Today I am super excited to have my good friends and my most favorite cannabis nurses, Olga Hall and Dawn Steenstra. I said it right?
You did.
Awesome. Practiced all morning for this. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. I appreciate making a long trek up to Hampden. So we have an hour together, and we're going to just hop right into it. So before we get to the exciting part where we had community members call in and give us their questions, and I want to have you guys give all your knowledge and information about that, I want to tell a little bit about your stories. So Olga, if you could tell us a little bit about how you got into the cannabis community, how cannabis has helped you, and a little bit about your nursing story, and specifically who you help today with your nursing.
Okay. I got introduced to cannabis, years ago. As a kid, smoked a little bit, stopped smoking for years. And then when I got older, started coming into health conditions, health problems, fibromyalgia, loose joints, issues with carpal tunnel, different pain management issues. And of course, they send you to pain management and the pain medications start to pile on. And then finally, my son just said to me, he was like, it's too much. Try weed. And I was like,
Timmy.
I was like, what? That's crazy. I'm a nurse. I can't do that. But I definitely could. At first, I started using it for sleep. And then once the medical program got put in place, oh my goodness, then, the range of products that were out there was able to get me off of all of my pain medications. So
That is awesome.
it was amazing.
When did you choose or decide in your life to become a nurse?
I always wanted to be a nurse, even when I was little. My mom was a nurse, so I wanted to be a nurse.
Yeah.
I wasn't really sure what kind of nursing I wanted to do. I know I worked in the hospital for years, and it wasn't the leg of nursing that worked for me.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like factory nursing. You get the patient in, you put a few Band-Aids on them, you get them out 3 weeks later, they're right back in. It doesn't feel like you're doing as much good. So I went into case management, where I'm kind of doing like end game, working on getting you from point A to point Z, making sure that your doctor is doing follow-up and everything, and making sure that patients are able to manage their own health care. And that's where you see the...
And you work with a lot of homeless individuals, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right now it's mostly mental health.
Yeah.
Homeless people, street people that are below income for regular insurance and things like that. We make sure that they get insurance, we make sure they get housing, we get them jobs, and make sure that their health care is managed.
That's awesome. So needed. And I'm a huge worker in the homeless community, and they need all the help that they can get. So I appreciate that's the type of nursing that you got into. Okay, Dawn, a little bit about you.
That's amazing how we're all alike in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I originally got into nursing. I had my own assisted living in my home for 21 years. And what I did is I took psych patients that were being deinstitutionalized out of Springfield State Hospital near where I lived. And they were basically just putting these people on the street if they didn't have a place to go. So I had a large home, and I happened to know the people in the community, and I said, can I help? And they're like, if you'd like to take some of these women and take care of them, that would be wonderful. So I ended up starting my own assisted living, and I had 3 elderly ladies that I took from Springfield, and over the years I helped 12 ladies from Springfield who otherwise would have been homeless as well. So my husband calls me Mother Teresa because I'm constantly, I never was looking to make a profit. I was looking to stay home and raise my children and help the community as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always wanted to do with my life, is help my fellow man. And I'll give my shirt off my back before I'll see somebody else suffer.
Yeah.
So I got into nursing because of that, and also my son had a very tragic accident when he was 3. And the doctors asked me, because I was so adept at asking questions medically, that they were like, are you a nurse? I said, no. They said, well, you should be. So right after that, I had made up my mind that I was going to get into nursing once he got into kindergarten. Journey with cannabis. I found out about cannabis 10 months after going through breast cancer. And being when I went into nursing, I was doing long-term care, palliative care, rehab, and hospice nursing. So, I'd seen my patients suffer and suffer and suffer because we only had the 4 medicines in our bag as a hospice nurse. We had Ativan, we had morphine, we had Zofran, and something else. But anyway, these don't work on everybody.
Yeah.
And when I found out about cannabis, I was at a Patients Out of Time conference that my husband took me to, and my mouth just went to the floor because I had just been through cancer therapy, radiation, sick, feeling horrible. My patients were sick, and I'm holding hands with these patients. I'm pumping them up with the drugs I'm allowed to, and they're not helping. And I was just floored. I'm like, we have something so simple and natural and safe right here in front of our eyes. Research from around the world tells us it's safe, and we're not allowed to have it. So I became a very angry advocate, right away that day, and I have been rolling ever since.
Yes, you have.
I have not stopped because I am just so furious at the fact that this is kept from people that need it the most.
Yeah.
Hospice patients patients that are dying, patients that have chronic disease processes. This is a travesty. And especially with the elderly, I deal specifically with the elderly. And, Alzheimer's care and dementia, this could be a game changer, in the elderly and long-term care environment. So that's how I got into cannabis nursing.
So you kind of touched on it. What specifically is a cannabis nurse? So someone grows up and they say, I want to be a cannabis nurse. What does that mean?
A lot of education.
Education.
It's funny because I'm an LPN, I'm a licensed practical nurse, and I was halfway through my RN program, so I kid a lot. I said, I think I've got about a PhD in cannabis because I've studied and I've taken so many classes just to learn because I wanted to be competent in this. I wanted people to be able to trust my judgment because there is really no medical guidance out there for anybody.
Correct.
And there are so many things that need to be considered, when we're treating our patients, so.
And that's the difference between a cannabis nurse and a cannabis advocate, is that we combine the nursing knowledge with the cannabis knowledge.
Yeah.
Lots of people, now I know that there's a cannabis degree, but up to this point, there hasn't really been a whole, cannabis education program, and I'm not entirely sure what that cannabis degree is going to entail anyway, but...
We all got degrees in cannabis.
Right.
I don't need to pay anybody any money.
So really, for me, to say cannabis nurse, the difference is that we can take your healthcare issues that you're actively treating, and then take cannabis, and then we can make those recommendations based on our evidence-based knowledge of both, as opposed to just one or the other. Also, doctors, I keep reminding my patients, doctors aren't taught, and nurses, we're not taught this in nursing school. In medical school and in nursing school, you're taught it's a drug, it's bad. The same thing that they teach, it's a Schedule I, you're not allowed to have it, and that's all they teach you. So it's important to have medical professionals that actually understand what cannabis does and how to integrate it into the rest of your medications.
Maybe using the example of what you did for my dad would be a great example of what you can do. So my father's in pain management, and I was giving him full spectrum CBD, and my father tested positive for THC.
Oh, no.
Obviously, right? Because there's THC in it and bioaccumulation. But I just really didn't think about it. And so he got in trouble. But however, in that time, he had never felt better, and he looked better, and people made comments about it. But because he had gotten in trouble. And so what I did was I called Olga, and then how did you help navigate so that we could get my dad a cannabis card and still be in pain management?
So most of the doctors, because they have a massive knowledge deficit when it comes to cannabis. Most of the problem that it is liability. Since they don't understand how it works, they don't want to prescribe more than one sedating substance together. Oh, I don't want to give you this and your narcotics and have you overdose. Not really understanding that cannabis isn't going to work that way. So outreaching the doctors. Some of them want the education, some of them don't, but all of them are willing to allow somebody else to eat the responsibility of the patient. So,
Olga's now responsible for my dad.
But basically, so the doctor was, I let her know he'll be in a program, he'll be monitored. We'll be letting you know exactly what the patient will be taking and exactly how much he'll be taking and how he's using it with his pain meds, what the response is. We'll give you weekly follow-ups until you're comfortable with that. Then we'll give you monthly follow-ups. Anytime there's a change, you'll be, updated in real time. Doctors love that.
Yeah.
They love it. They just want to be able to, if somebody comes in their office and goes through their records and says, I'm going to sue you for something, no, I have all these records that show that this patient has been followed.
Yeah.
It's made all the difference.
And I think especially with the community you serve, Dawn, with seniors, it's so important. I think they trust doctors and nurses and medical people more than anybody. Until a doctor says it's okay, I don't think they ever really think it's okay. And so I think that's what, man, when that happened, my dad's attitude changed immediately about what cannabis was and how it could like actually help him. So Dawn, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing working with seniors, community, and cannabis?
I can't help them all.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, sincerely, we find that my seniors that I'm dealing with particularly, I mean, it's kind of a neat story because I was brought in to speak with Dr. Fry to Leisure World of Maryland, and it's a community of about 8,000 seniors all in one place, and they had like 250 people there. Wow. And right after that, they decided to form a cannabis club, a Cannabis 101 club. Someone there named Carmenetta Werner decided to form this club, and there's like 120 members of this club already. And they are hungry for this information because, frankly, most of them are fed up with all the pills and all the medications and all the side effects of these medications. Because especially when people get older, I mean, they're shoved with supplements and all kinds of things to try to get their dietary intake more. And what we found is that, they're just tired of all the medicines. And a lot of the doctors are afraid to touch the elderly because there's so many comorbid conditions that are together for the same person. Like, they could have heart disease or pulmonary disease, as well as chronic asthma, chronic arthritis, whatever. So we're dealing with a lot of conditions at one time. A lot of them want to get off of these medications, so I'm working with them to help them to learn to listen to their body, teaching them about journaling, teaching them about, just paying attention and taking back control of their own health care.
Yeah.
Because this plant has so many benefits that, we can, I was able to get off all my narcotics as well. I was 18 months a pain patient, or not 18 months, 18 years a pain patient. And it took me about 3 months to wean myself off of all of my medications. I was taking narcotics, I was taking benzos together, which you're not supposed to do, and my doctors had no problem with it. And I was able to wean safely off of all of my meds too. So that's what we're doing right now is we're working with the elderly. And most of the thing is it's not so much that they're afraid, it's that they are tired of the healthcare system as it is.
Yeah. I mean, I just was talking to my mother-in-law explaining the difference in treatment. I've had a knee surgery 2 years ago on my shoulder just a couple of weeks ago. And because I was healthier and thinner, I was treated so much better as a patient. And I feel the sicker you are, maybe the worse you get treated. And maybe it was mind-blowing to me what I was given, what they allowed me to do, the wording that they used, talking about positive mindset, when before it was, here, let's just do this. Yeah, you may be able to run again, but probably not. Like, it was just kind of like not a big deal. And I feel that's kind of the way, like, they don't want to tackle these hard, complicated problems.
They absolutely don't. That's part of why I focused on that homeless population.
Yeah.
They get swept under the rug.
Oh, for sure.
So much. And not just them. There's people reach out for me from the community constantly, especially the Medicaid population. I don't know what it is, what doctors have against poor people.
Yeah, it's
but
true.
This is a huge issue for me, that if you don't have the money or you don't look like you have the money, you're going to get dismissed. Your concerns are going to be dismissed. And this is a thing. Like, I really enjoy intervening. I really enjoy digging in doctors' tails, and just because you don't think it's important doesn't mean it's not important. I've had patients that we ended up being admitted inpatient in the hospital and getting surgeries over things that the doctor the week before had dismissed, and that's absolutely not okay with me. So,
yeah, I mean, I think nurses are the most important people. Like, I noticed that in my mom's life, like, the most caring, but also I think the most knowledgeable in the practicality of maybe medicine and how it's applied to a human being versus just a textbook,
right?
And what they do with it. You guys ready for a question? Do you want to?
Absolutely.
See? So here's what I'm going to say about this. This is not medical advice.
Thank you. We had to say that
before everyone freaks out. So in working with cannabis, you have to do what's best for you. And all of our bodies are different. And that's probably the number one thing is, unlike maybe taking a Percocet, there's some trial and error that can happen. But rest assured, over-medicating with cannabis does not have the same effect as over-medicating with a Percocet. Correct?
Fact.
Right. That is a fact.
You can die.
You can die from a Percocet. So there is like a little bit of that fear goes away when we do a trial and error. So let's, I'm going to start out with a person from Leonardtown, Maryland. And they ask, I just started to take Zoloft again. Is it safe to also medicate with CBD?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
CBD is just going to boost the effects of your antidepressants. The antidepressants, most antidepressants, Zoloft, one of them, they get your serotonin. They get your brain to produce more serotonin, and the serotonin is laying there in your brain, but it doesn't necessarily tell the serotonin where to go.
Oh, well, that doesn't work.
actually takes all those little neurochemicals and tells them, you need to go here. We don't have enough of this here. We need more of this here. We need less of this here. Medications don't do that. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be on the Zoloft.
Yeah.
You absolutely should. So it could do that more production of serotonin.
And you recently, Olga, I mean, I think everybody here agrees, like, it's a combination of all medicine. Sometimes you do have to take a pill. And so you recently just went through an experience with that, right?
I did.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Absolutely. This was... I really got overzealous because I was so excited about the cannabis thing. I got really overzealous.
Yeah.
I'm coming off all of my medications. And I just decided, like I'm not a nurse, to cold turkey a 60 milligram Cymbalta every day. As my son will tell you.
Donnie's face.
Right. It was such a horrible idea.
Yeah.
Actually, at the end of it, I was starting to have like split. It almost felt like a split personality at the end of it. It was really, really bad. And went immediately back on my medications, knowing to myself that some people simply need the meds.
Yep, it's true.
But you can definitely use that cannabis to boost it.
Yeah.
Because even on the Cymbalta before, I wasn't getting the kind of effects that I'm getting now with the Cymbalta and daily CBD.
I gotcha. Is there anything, Dawn, that you shouldn't take CBD with?
CBD in general?
Yeah.
I know that the only thing I'm very, very careful about with CBD are epileptic children.
Yeah.
Because CBD helps, but if they're already on a lot of pharmaceuticals, it's a very delicate balance to get them weaned down and to kick the CBD up. But CBD I've found generally is safe with just about anything that you can take in addition to it.
Okay.
Now, have you found any contraindications on CBD?
Only anticoagulants and very specifically Coumadin.
Oh, I was going to say with cannabis in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I didn't think about the fact that,
That was the
cannabis
only
is a
one.
leafy green too.
Yes.
Coumadin
Okay.
and warfarin, blood thinners. Now, the more modern blood thinners like
Right.
Xarelto and things like that you don't need blood monitoring with, they're safe to take with cannabis.
Okay.
But the old-fashioned ones like warfarin and Coumadin that you're getting blood testing to make sure you have the right levels, you have to be very careful with that. Blood pressure medicines as well. I always caution my cardiac patients who have multiple blood pressure medications that they need to be careful with cannabis in general. CBD doesn't seem to affect the blood pressure as much, but cannabis in general
Naturally
there are a
makes
couple.
you a little more, like, you can have an elevation of your blood pressure. Maybe you had a strain with a little too much alpha-pinene in it.
Yeah.
And you have that elevated heart rate. I can understand, like,
And
someone
smoking in general can raise the blood pressure, whether it's weed or cigarettes or
That's
anything.
true.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's all great information. So this next one is from Liz in Mechanicsville, and I actually have the same question. So she says, when I consume edibles, they tend to make me groggy after a couple of hours. Is there any way to combat that? So a few questions. Next, why do I feel so different using different products with similar doses? So for example, she says she will do what she thinks is the equivalent of a vape versus an edible, and a vape is, she doesn't feel it after 20 minutes. So what can she do to counteract the grogginess of the edible that she takes for severe pain? And then why does she feel different using different things?
I'll grab the edible, the administration times and the times that the different administration ways last. Okay, I said that all wrong. Different ways that you take in cannabis work differently. So, like, for example, edibles, you're going to get probably 8 hours of coverage from an edible. The reason you're getting groggy after a few hours is because the peak action of that edible doesn't kick in until a few hours. So even if you're feeling it after an hour, it's peaking probably at 2 to 3 hours. The best way to combat that, if you're noticing that when you're getting that really high peak action and you're getting kind of groggy, as we all do, CBD tincture directly under the tongue, or a CBD vape. That always really helps because CBD takes down a THC high.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, I mean, you can always sniff peppercorns or even chew peppercorns that have been soaked in CBD. That takes care of things rather quickly. And drinking lemonade also helps because the limonene will offset all that as well in the lemonade.
Not fake lemonade.
Real lemonade.
Yes, real lemonade.
One, yeah, the lemonade.
And then if you can talk to, and I know it has a lot to do with everybody's body is different, but why she feels so different consuming cannabis different ways.
I think because they, like Olga was saying, they each have different onset times. You know, if you take a vape or if you smoke some cannabis, you're going to have an immediate reaction because it goes straight to your brain, straight to your bloodstream, through the respiratory channels and the circulatory channels. If you take an edible, however, that's worked through the liver first, and it actually turns into THC hydroxy 11, and it's even stronger than THC in 9, you know, so delta 9. So, you know, these different administration methods work in different ways through different pathways, and for different conditions. You know, because you can take rather high levels of CBD and not get any kind of psychoactive effect whatsoever.
Sure.
Okay, but you take just a little bit over what you can tolerate in THC, and you could have a potentially adverse reaction or negative reaction that you don't want to have. It's limited.
Panic attack.
Yeah, it's limited. But, you know, and also, too, it all depends on what's in that formulation, you know, because if it's made primarily with, chemovar that is towards the indica leaning or sativa leaning, we don't really have true sativa or true indica anymore. So people need to get away from that. Most everything you find now is a hybrid of both. But, you know, if you get a formulation that has those terpenes that are, you know, awakening terpenes like limonene, and things like that, pinene, you know, it tends to perk you up and make you more awake and aroused. If you're taking something that has some linalool added or sedative type of terpenes, then you could end up getting very groggy. I mean, I find that, you know, when I want to sleep, I want something that's going to knock me down. You know, I don't want to wake up. You know, I want to go to sleep and stay asleep. So, you know, I kind of go for that grogginess. I don't like the hangover in the morning, which, you know, is kind of what I'm equating the question to, the hangover feeling in the morning. But you can offset that with either, you know, a sativa leaning. In Maryland, what will we get? A caviar from Curio?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, get a sativa caviar from Curio, guaranteed. You know, we'll knock that right out of there.
Okay, great info. So from Sugar Hits, I was dying to say that one. I've been using CBD topically for eczema, which has been mostly my body, scalp, knees, and under my lip. There's been so much discussion on CBD lately. Can you tell me what the benefits are, if there are any, for eczema, and what recommendations, other than just topicals, for eczema?
My recommendation is more CBD.
More CBD?
You've got CBD, CBD receptor. You have endocannabinoid receptors in your skin as well. So using CBD cream as well as a prescription cream together, a lot of time I've seen patients have a really good response, maybe like a steroid cream along with the CBD cream, a really excellent response to that, as well as eating your medications. Whole plant medicine for skin conditions can't be beat. Putting it on there and eating it.
So processed through the liver.
Right, and that's something that we don't have a whole lot of in the cannabis space. Once you get into a regulated market, it seems like we don't have a lot of whole plant medicine.
Yeah, it's very like upsetting.
Yeah, and as
Distillate and
I'm a
isolate doesn't work
purist.
as well
you know,
for
I'm
me.
from way back when, as far as cannabis nursing. I got into cannabis nursing when it first started, and you know, because of that, you know, I believe in descheduling. I believe in, you know, having whole plant, growing your own. I feel like it's a human right, but indeed, our products that we have now, really and truly, even the COAs, the certificates of analysis that we get, are very limited. You know, as far as your, you know, sometimes you have good terpene profiles and you have good cannabinoid profiles, but sometimes it almost looks like it was made with an isolate. That it's mainly CBD in there, or mainly, you know, 85% THC and, you know, non-detectable levels of other things. So it's very frustrating as a nurse because, you know, we're basing it on our knowledge, you know, of how we blend these different things together holistically for whatever someone's issues are.
Yeah.
So, you know, I intend on, you know, helping with some legislation to get things more whole plant based and whole plant leaning in Maryland.
I feel like and I don't know this, so I could be wrong, but I just feel like it's less economical to do whole plant, and maybe that's why they do it, or maybe people don't know. what
Actually,
it is
I would
because
think
it's
it would
very
be more. I think that it would be more economical
Yeah.
because it's not
why
so much
don't
of
they
an
do-
extraction process.
yeah.
When they extract with CO2 or butane or whatever,
That's true.
they lose the terpenes
Yeah.
in that process, and then they have to add them back. So it's kind of like you're messing with the plant, you're destroying part of the plant, and then you're like trying to fix it. So our medicine that we have is good. It's as comprehensive as they can make it, but still you're dealing primarily right now with cannabinoid ratios
Yeah.
and terpenes that are blended back in, which may not even be the original strain. So
That was what I was thinking for that previous question about the vapes versus smoke. Is that you're not getting the same product.
Right.
Even if they're using the same flower, it rarely has the same terpene cannabinoid profile, and a lot of time they're adding the stuff back in, like she was saying. So that's why you're going to get different effects from the flower to the
and
vapes
that's another
too.
reason why it's a what'd you say, trial and error situation. You know, we very rarely actually hit the nail on the head the very first time with a patient,
That's
but we
true.
can definitely get a good handle for where we are just by how the patient reacts to whatever they try for their particular condition.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Awesome. Thank you for that. So here is another one from Miss Saab Hun. How does damage to the brain affect the ECS?
Hi, Donnie. How does damage to the brain?
Affect the ECS. If we even know that, because, this is all still so new. So if you guys are aware if there's anything that...
I feel like it's somewhat reversed. Like once you get brain damage, then we focus more on what your ECS can do for you, as opposed to how, the other way around. Like, for example, the ECS boosts in, a matter of fact, brain injury and Alzheimer's and things, that's like the big new area of research right now because CBD is huge for neurogenesis, which is spawning new brain cells. For traumatic brain injury patients, even PTSD patients that have any kind of brain atrophy, they're looking into CBD to help rebuild those, maybe not those specific areas, but rebuild so that they can have function again. Just with that's how I connect the ECS to brain injury. Not so much that the ECS can cause it, but that the ECS can fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and particularly with traumatic brain injury, whenever there's an injury to the brain, there's usually an inflammatory process that happens. The brain swells and tries to protect itself, and all those cells go up there to try to mitigate the damage. The ECS also goes into high gear, and we already know that the ECS or cannabis is a neuroprotectant and a anti-inflammatory. So, if we get CBD at least into, somebody that's had a brain injury, whether it's a stroke, whether it's a accident, whether it's, a concussion, or even a sports injury, these CBD could help offset that inflammatory process because when you're banging the head around, you're keeping that inflammatory process going. So, this will mitigate it and keep it in check and help to heal those cells that are being damaged.
I think that's been like one of the biggest misconceptions is by using it, it's going to make you mentally slower.
Right. And
And
that's
so
such a problem
we don't
too,
want
'cause
to give
CBD
someone who has dementia CBD because they already have
the
memory
slowness.
issues. And so all of a sudden maybe CBD is going to make it worse. But that's just not the case.
No, it's not the case
It's
at
actually
all.
the exact opposite.
I mean, we found with the research that's being done in Israel with Peake and Olam, they have different formulations of cannabis they've been using with the elderly, and they have found nothing but remarkable things, especially with their dementia and Alzheimer's patients. And this is something that I'm trying to get done in Maryland is a concentrated study, as they did in Israel and as they did in New York at the Hebrew Home, at a nursing home with a dementia unit to see what CBD at least can do for these patients. From what I understand, they had a 90% reduction in pain. They have very little use for G-tubes and supplements and things like that. People are getting more active, especially combined with music therapy. Music and cannabis tends to help a lot, especially with the elderly population. So I'm excited about what's happening. I'm really
so
hoping that we
awesome.
can get some of these studies done in our state soon.
I just feel like you'll have a generation that won't be zombies.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
That
Because they're on a ton of medications. The elderly, pretty much everybody over 40 is on just
I know,
a ton of
I'm
medication.
41. It hit me at 40.
Yeah. So if we could just take down just a few of the meds, and get, and it's almost like a cumulative effect. You got to get people up and moving to get them to feel better, so you can get them off less medication. Get them on less medications. But if they're in pain, they don't want to get up and get moving. So if we could get cannabis in there to kind of break that cycle, we can definitely get people better without having to use a pile of pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely. I mean, I think even watching my dad, lack of movement is a big deal.
Oh, sure.
And if you're in pain, you don't move.
Yeah.
And so, man, it's like the chicken or the egg. You got to fix something to help them get. But if you give them pain pills, then they're groggy and tired, then they don't want to move.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm very excited about the work, especially seeing just with my CBD dosing with my father, like what a big difference it was for him. Okay, so I have the last question, and this is the big doozy. Okay. My forever question is cannabis and breastfeeding. Do or don't? And that is, I run, not diet.
So I've read several studies.
And again, this is not medical
Not
advice.
at all medical advice. Of course, if you read it, it's going to tell you not to do it. Okay, if you're going to do it, the studies that I've read say that the closer to the time of breastfeeding is the higher the concentration in breast milk. First of all, the concentration that you're getting from the mother into the breast milk is something like 2.5% of the THC that the mom gets.
Yeah.
So if, however much, THC concentration in her blood is a very, very small concentration in the breast milk. And then on top of that, the child is taking it in orally, so it's doing that pass through the liver, so they're getting almost nothing by the time that it actually hits their system.
Yeah.
This, that 2.5% that moves over into the breast milk, after the first hour, that goes down to 0.8%. After the second hour, it's almost not testable. So if you give it a good solid 4 hours from the time that you smoke to the time that you breastfeed, there shouldn't be a significant amount of THC passing over to your baby.
Yeah.
Although, if you're in the court systems at all, it is not
What will
worth
happen?
trying at all,
Yes.
because they will come to your house and they will send
Take your
social
baby.
services and take
so
your
this
child.
is like a big deal legally. Like this question is great. However, if social services found out that you were using cannabis and you had a baby and you were breastfeeding, your child would be taken away and you would be arrested for child endangerment.
And I want everybody to know that.
Yeah,
That
so-
needs to be
and
clear.
I asked
that's
that
a
question
problem.
stating that.
That's a huge problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Losing your children for cannabis is...
And the thing is, we want to be honest about our cannabis use. We
Yeah.
want to tell our doctors what we're doing so that they can help us, with these
Appropriately.
medications appropriately. But, if you're pregnant and you admit to using cannabis or you admit to being a medical patient, that doctor will write that down. That doctor is then obligated to report it. And if they suspect that you're using cannabis when you go to have your baby, they will test you and they will test the baby, and then you do run a huge risk of having your baby taken from you. And to me, that's a horrendous travesty in this system.
It's insane. They'll give you
We have a
Zofran.
legal-
They'll give you Phenergan if you have a hyperemesis syndrome. They'll give you all kinds of dangerous pharmaceuticals.
Well, and even using cannabis during pregnancy, I happened to I had horrendous morning sickness, and the doctor gave me Bendectin. Well, little did I know that my mother had Bendectin, and I was born with a severe birth defect in my chest that I had to have 2 surgeries for. And then it turned out that my first son had the exact same birth defect.
Huh.
And I was like, wait a hold it, And I didn't find out until the late 80s that Bendectin was, correlated with birth defects. But like thalidomide, think about that.
Oh,
it
my
was
goodness.
a FDA-approved drug that was given to pregnant women who were having babies, and we had a rash of deformed babies.
The
because of
babies with no
thalidomide.
arms and
Yeah.
legs. Of course, they've since rebranded it as an oncology medication, and it went from $1 a bottle to my mother, I think, was paying $1,500 a week for 14 pills. So that's the
But
pharmaceutical
to me, that's
industry.
insane.
That's the pharmaceutical industry.
industry will turn and they'll bait and switch.
Yeah. I mean, I have had my own experience with my doctor. She is baffled that I have lost weight, got healthy, not using anything. And I've always been open about my cannabis with her. And when I went in for my pre-op for my rotator cuff surgery, 2 days later, I got a call from a drug counselor saying that I needed to talk to them about my cannabis use.
Oh, my goodness.
And what she couldn't believe, I think, because I don't think she's really been tracking my progress. When she did my pre-op, I think she saw my weight loss. I think she finally saw my numbers and was like, what are you doing? And when I told her, I don't think she believes me. And I
thinks you're on
think I'm
drugs.
crazy. And so now I have this person, and I was like, well, I guess you're not my primary anymore. Because that is just not the correct way
At all.
I was just shocked. Like, I'm like, I'm getting better, and
this is your
you're trying
response.
to send me to drug rehab.
It seems to me that the medical profession in general, when I speak to doctors or when I do a talk and I have doctors in the audience or nurses particularly, I teach a lot of nurses in different states, they come back at me with, where's the research? I'm like, you can look on PubMed, you can look anywhere. There is a ton of research.
Yeah.
You're just not going to find a lot of research in this country.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people now, excuse me, are taking the initiative to do independent studies.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful.
I think that's so
It's
awesome.
about time.
Necessary.
We need it in this country. And we also have our neighbors to the north in Canada that are doing a lot. And I'm looking at Canada for a lot of policy work. But we have people that go into the hospital, like you said, and like babies. We had one of our Canada moms that their child has epilepsy. That child was weaned completely off of all of their epilepsy meds, right? The first time they were hospitalized, they were allowed to bring their CBD oil into the hospital. And it was counted as a home med, put in the narcotics box.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's fine with me. To me, that's the perfect answer
Yep.
to the entire issue. But there are other hospitals that are like, no, it's horrible stuff. And it's just insane. But the second time, they wouldn't let her have her CBD. And they took that child off of a working regimen for a serious disease like epilepsy and made her go back on pharmaceuticals again, which means they had to go through the whole tapering up process and everything else, because you can't just slam a kid with a bunch of, these strong meds. So, to me, it's like, this is ridiculous. This just can't
It's
go
just
on
disheartening
like
how much
It is.
power that they can have.
this. Money, politics,
Or
and
them
big
pulling
pharma.
my psych patients taking them off of cannabis and putting them on methadone. When I first started working at that clinic,
Oh my God, you just made a meth addict.
I could
Why did
not
you do that?
believe that was the standard practice. They've stopped. But I actually
Wow.
had to take the cannabis information into our doctor, and I went toe to toe with her probably 3 times before she agreed that it was she really thought that was the path of, like, she had a doctor. She had no idea that she wasn't supposed to be prescribing methadone for cannabis. She had no idea. I was mind boggled. I went in there all angry and finally explained it to her, and she was like, "Oh," I'm like, thinking to myself, it's a plant. I know you know it's a plant.
Yeah.
But I guess if you think of it from that term, so is codeine. So
Well, yeah. I mean, here's what the issue is, and I think I've said this in several podcasts, but I think it's the most interesting thing I ever found out about pills, right? They're all from plants.
Right, yeah.
We've just isolated
Right,
one
one
thing.
Right, one thing.
molecule
And I
out
think
of
that's
that.
where her brain was at.
We get all of these side effects.
Right.
Because if we just took the whole plant,
well, that was
because
with
all the other things about the plant help with that side
There are
effect.
over 500 chemicals in, molecules in the cannabis plant.
That's true.
Yeah.
120 plus cannabinoids alone. I mean, imagine if the pharmaceutical companies could do that, as far as take every single solitary molecule. They could make a fortune off of cannabis alone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay? But the problem is with cannabis, it's made to work together with all those different chemicals. You can't make that into a pharmaceutical. It's impossible.
Well, that's why you're seeing liver damage with these kids with the epidurals.
Right.
You see liver damage. You don't see that with whole plant medicine, but you're not supposed to isolate CBD and then give it to somebody in those high doses like that. It might be effective for seizures, but it's also causing
And that's going to
liver
have, I
damage.
think, like a negative impact on whole plant CBD use, because now they're going to put side effects
Yes.
based on this,
They already
not
are.
based on that. And so it's going to confuse the consumers that much more as to what it is.
Well, and that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah.
The
They've
whole
already done
CBD
that.
industry.
The FDA already has warnings up or that CBD can cause liver damage, not at all acknowledging the fact that this is an isolate
Yeah.
in high doses.
There is something I would like to say, since we do have
Yeah.
a public format here,
Yeah.
okay?
Go for it, Dawn.
My husband works in the CBD hemp world,
Yeah.
okay? He's been in the industry for 18 years. He was one of the people that got the Farm Bill passed that made hemp of the CSA and able to be grown everywhere,
that's
okay?
awesome.
He is now working with the FDA and the USDA to make regulations, because right now CBD is a completely unregulated
Yes.
market. If you are going to order something online, okay, very important. I have a list of people that are already doing good GMP practices to FDA compliance, people that are doing the USDA compliance, people that are organic, people that have testing done regularly. I would venture to say, and this is not exaggerating, we have millions of CBD companies. A lot of these companies are importing CBD powder from China, okay?
Wow.
CBD isolate. CBD isolate is only limited to a certain degree for good, and many of these companies are using CBD isolate. It's not going to help you to the degree that whole plant will.
Yep.
I suggest if you're going to go online and order something, please, number one, look at the story behind the medicine. Make sure that they have labs for every batch they make. Okay, they're called COAs, or certificates of analysis. Very important to check to make sure that they have those labs, and check their reviews and see if it actually works. Because really and truly, you do enough research on this, you'll find out who the players are and who are the real deal.
That's a fact.
And I just found out that you can actually have your hemp tested in Maryland. So you can go to any of the cannabis testing labs, and they will test any hemp product for you.
I didn't know
and
that.
so, like, if you were, like, for my dad, once we get through all this, whatever brand we go to use, I'm going to take that just to make sure that there are good practices, and always look for those COAs and reputation. Because you're right. Like, I literally was just in every gas station.
Oh,
They're
stuff,
everywhere.
Don't
It's
buy it
everywhere.
from a gas
Please
station. Please
stop.
don't
Yeah.
buy it from
I
a
saw
gas
CBD
station.
brownies in saran wrap. I was like, this is not going to
They're
go.
putting CBD in everything.
Yeah.
And technically, CBD is still classified. They're trying to keep it classified as a Schedule I drug.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because they do still have a patent on it. they still
Actually-
have a patent on it.
Now I'll tell you something after the broadcast. I don't want to announce
Dawn
that.
knows the secrets.
But, the point being that, people are grabbing up CBD thinking, oh, my God, it's this miracle drug. And, yes, there are a lot of miraculous things about CBD, but please, look for whole plant medicine if you're going to buy it online. Please watch what you buy in the stores even. Walgreens. We've got huge CBD, marts opening up in your malls and stuff. Big, beautiful, beautiful displays. But you don't know what's in that medicine.
Exactly. Don't assume just because it's
Don't
from
assume.
a
Even make
pharmacy.
sure that the lab is legit, that they do the labs from. They could be making up a lab and making up COAs. We don't know because nobody's regulating CBD market yet.
Yeah, it's
or
just
the
kind of
hemp market
wild
yet.
right now.
It's wild.
What you can do.
It's
And
crazy.
it'll have the pendulum will swing back
It will.
the other way.
It will.
It'll be
The goal
regulated
is
text soon
for
enough.
people not to have health issues while we're waiting for that. And that's really what it is. Like if you are treating an illness with CBD and it's not great CBD, you're not helping yourself. And maybe if it's a bad CBD product, you could be hurting yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
And two other things about hemp products as well. If they say that they are full spectrum CBD, okay, with absolutely no THC,
They're liars.
they are lying through their teeth because full spectrum means full spectrum. If you take a full spectrum product with even 0.3% THC, however, there is a chance you will test positive.
Absolutely.
As your
Tony
dad did.
Frankelli knows
Definitely,
You know,
probably will.
And,
Yeah.
and you will, even if it's a tiny little bit, because those metabolites are there. If it says broad spectrum with absolutely no THC, then I will let that slide because, a broad spectrum means it's missing something. But, these are just different terminologies that we have to constantly teach people because nobody knows
Yeah.
any different. And, there are companies that are, touting that they have, full spectrum with absolutely no THC. And, they get very angry with me when I front them on that. But, as a purist who uses full spectrum CBD for my pain management, don't tell people that.
Yeah.
Because even missing that one little cannabinoid still takes something away from the medicine.
Absolutely. 100%. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
ending on that note. Before we wrap up, because both of you are so full of information, what is the best way for people to reach out to you or follow you?
Probably Instagram.
Okay.
My Instagram, the Cannabis Nurse. I get back to messages as timely as possible, but I love to help and I love to give people guidance in the right direction. So
And I can attest to that. Like, she helped a very cranky patient, my father. So.
it was so sweet.
They're always better for a stranger, trust me.
True. Very true.
They are.
What about you, Dawn?
Well, I work for Mission Dispensaries as an education and engagement coordinator. I'm helping to train our staff better in managing our patients well. You can reach me on Facebook. I'm Dawn Marie on Facebook. I can be reached there as well as dawnmarie.steenstra at missioncan.com, MISSIONCAN.com.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you again for you both being here, for your knowledge. This won't be the last time we have you because there are more and more questions that people need to have answered. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you who put your careers on the line to stand up for a plant. And I think that's what people don't recognize, is that you guys are not the majority. And you take a lot of heat for all of us so that we can have open, effective conversations with our doctors about cannabis. So I'm greatly appreciative for all your hard work. And
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us.
us.
Of course. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next time on Conversations with Maryjane.